California, a place with miles and miles of sprawl. And with that comes a lot of people and a lot of cars. Known for multiple cities with some of the worst traffic in the US, traffic and congestion is always on the minds of its residents and politicians.
If people continue to have hour and a half, 2-hour commutes.
In many ways, California has been on the forefront when it comes to addressing climate change.
We moved forward with our tailpipe emission standards and with our green building initiative, low carbon fuel standards.
Now California is taking its next big step to meeting its climate goals.
Reducing the amount of time that people spend in their cars.
In this video, I'm going to explain the big change California is making to its environmental process and how that can change the transportation world as we know it. This is an environmental impact report, or an EIR as we call it. There's one thing you need to understand about the environmental process in California. You need to understand this. This particular one is very thick because it's of Apple Park, which is a high-profile development. Before 1970, these EIRs weren't needed. But then the California Environmental Quality Act changed all that. And now these reports get created when all kinds of buildings and infrastructure gets proposed as projects. Imagine this one in particular may have come from something like this. Apple came to the city of Cupertino, City Hall, and said, "Hey Cupertino, we want to build this in your city." And then the city of Cupertino said, "Well, that's a big project. Will it likely affect the environment?" Yes, probably. Any significant impact to the environment you need to study and document in an EIR, because the California Environmental Quality Act says okay, and you need to show how you will lessen or fix the impacts. Okay. Oh yeah, and we're going to share it with the public and get their comments too. So in this document right here are all the environmental impacts that Apple would create by building their campus and how they plan on addressing it. Anything and everything can be found in this. Tree layouts, street improvements, zoning, illumination, flood zones, protected animals, land use, biological, geology, hydrology, transportation, noise. Wait, back up. Transportation? There's a lot here. Turns out when you build a 3.4 million square feet mega campus, you're going to create a lot of congestion. And the EIR does show it. Pages and pages of congestion that Apple Park would create. And that's the story of this video, because California thinks all of this is wrong. Back in the 20th century, the popularity of cars were rising fast in the US. Highways and roadways became, and still are today, the primary way people chose to get around. With the booming auto industry and a high demand for cars, these highways and roadways did not have enough capacity to meet the demand and were often congested. In order to quantify this congestion, to put a metric behind it, a standard practice emerged and was used. This is the latest edition of the Highway Capacity Manual. If you ever wanted to learn how congestion is calculated, this is the comprehensive reference that lays it all out. The methods for calculating capacity and congestion for all kinds of situations can be found in these 3 volumes. This right here is probably the most important thing to understand. When congestion is calculated, a letter grade is assigned to represent the magnitude of that congestion. We call this level of service. Level of service A, which represents the least congested situation, all the way to level of service F, which represents the worst. Why am I telling you this? The Apple Park EIR uses this very same method to calculate congestion, and the report states very clearly that congestion will get worse if the project were to be built. Look at all those level of service E's and F's. This is Darrell Steinberg. Remember him? You briefly saw him in the beginning of this video. He's the current mayor of Sacramento, California, and prior to that, he served in the California State Assembly and California Senate. And you saw how he was talking about major changes to how driving in California should be like. It's something that didn't sit well with the California Environmental Quality Act and EIRs like these. You notice a common theme with all these EIRs. The EIRs first would always point out where congestion is occurring and where it'll get worse. And in order to reduce this congestion, the report would always state to add more lanes and capacity to these roadways. But then when we build these lanes in real life, the new lanes would eventually get filled with more cars. Not only was it common for congestion to return to previous levels, the addition of more cars increased pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. So in essence, California's environmental process with these EIRs, at least the transportation part of them, has been counterproductive to achieving California's ambitious climate goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That is why in 2013, Darrell Steinberg authored SB 743, and that turned the whole transportation part of the EIR process upside down. No more calculating congestion the way it's always been, no more highway capacity manual or level of service, and no more widening lanes. SB 743 made it that there had to be a new way of calculating transportation environmental impacts, and that new way turned its focus on vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. Okay, I promise that will be the last new acronym I introduce in this video. VMT is representative of the distance cars travel. For example, your daily VMT would be the total distance you drove for the day. By making VMT the new standard metric, it takes the focus off of capacity and congestion and puts that focus on land use and location. Here's what I mean. Before SB 743, Apple would build a project, and no matter where it was proposed to be built, the surrounding road network would be analyzed using level of service to determine congestion levels. Now in the new way, the location that Apple chooses to build its new campus will be used to estimate the amount of driving it will generate. If Apple chooses to build its campus away from housing and with no easy access to transit, it would be a lot worse to building it closer to these things, because more VMT is generated the farther people have to drive. So this major change is expected to result with the fast tracking of projects that generate less VMT or are built in prime locations to be served by transit. It will at the same time discourage projects that generate high VMT. These projects are likely to encounter more environmental challenges, thus needing more mitigations. That means that over time, projects like these will be favored over projects like these, but it will take a while to see how effective these changes will be. That's because SB 743 was passed in 2013. Because this was such a big change, local government agencies need a lot of time to create new guidelines. So the state mandated that the official switch from LS to VMT had to take place by July 1st, 2020. The change has just started, and it's going to take many years to see if it's going to move the needle when it comes to reducing the use of cars and greenhouse gas emissions. One thing that's for sure is many other states that have similar greenhouse gas emission goals are watching California and how this is going to play out. If this turns out to be effective, you're likely to see more states adopting this approach in the future. But is this enough to get people out of their cars? That is the key question. And what about electric cars and other technological advancements? Transportation is also a deeply personal activity, and not everyone may be moved by a new law that will try to nudge them into living a different lifestyle. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.